What's going on, guys? Foresight Capital here. So Alex Karp and a lot of top executives at Palantir have been consistently selling shares over the past couple of weeks, and it's really spooked a lot of retail investors because retail investors and potentially even the institutional investors that have been plowing into the stock believe that Palantir is substantially undervalued currently, yet executives are still consistently selling shares, which could be a sign that they don't believe that the company is going anywhere anytime quickly, and if it does go anywhere, potentially in a downward direction. So we're going to talk about the recent trend in Palantir, the sales and the sale dates from Alex Karp, and then talk about some statements that he's made in the past surrounding money and the direction of Palantir. All that I ask is that if this video brings you value, consider subscribing and share it with somebody else who may watch it, because both of those things really help out the algorithm. So Palantir actually does have a big pricing catalyst coming up on April 14th when they have their next demo day where they'll be showcasing their Foundry product and how their clients interact with that. And that's important because we saw an insane rally heading into the inaugural demo day back on January 26th, where the stock went from the lower 20s where it's trading now all the way up to about $34 per share. And by the end of the next day, we had broken out to all-time highs at about $45 per share before selling off just a bit into earnings. And then of course afterwards, we've had a ton of downward and selling pressure from some of the top executives within the company that are cashing in on a lot of their options that have been in place since 2003. And I bring all of that up because Alex Karp and the executives know that this positive catalyst is coming for the stock, but they're still selling, and a lot of retail traders are concerned about that. What's important to note is that a lot of times these sales are structured and they're put in place well before the actual sale takes place. So I've pulled up a Form 4 here. You can find these on the SEC website, but you can also find them easier through Palantir's investor relations page. And anytime an owner of more than 10% of a company sells shares, they do have to disclose their total sales to all of the investors. So you can easily find this on the investor relations page, not only for Alex Karp, but also Steve Cohen, Peter Thiel, and any of the other directors within the company. We can see that on January 4th, Alex actually liquidated about $1.3 million worth of stock at about $23.30 and $23.77 per share. And if you come down and read the explanation of responses, you can see that this was a structured sale and that this was likely scheduled well before the actual sale occurred, because January 4th was actually the first Monday and the first trading day of the year, meaning that this was likely put into play towards the end of December. And that is actually when Palantir was trading very close to its lowest after falling from all-time highs of about $33 per share towards the end of November. So Alex took about $1.3 million, and that is likely to cover some sort of tax liability that he was going to have at the year end, or just a structured year-end withdrawal. There's really no way of knowing because the explanation doesn't say exactly why, but we can theorize around why these withdrawals happen on particular dates. So the next withdrawal that was actually done by Alex Karp, or the next sale that was done, was on February 2nd, where there was again about $1.3 million worth of Palantir sold, this time at prices around $31 and $33 per share. And we can actually see that this was him exercising some options that were initiated many, many years ago. We can see that the strike price of these options is about 10 cents per share. These are likely from 10 plus years ago, and if you take a look at the explanation, again, it was a structured sale that was really kind of put in play a good bit prior to the actual sale taking place. And that was on February 2nd when we had seen a pullback from previous highs, but the sale order could have been put in place sometime around the demo day, so capitalizing on all of that hype. And then the most recent sale that's had a lot of people talking because it's a substantially larger amount is the sale that occurred right around March 29th, where Alex liquidated about $10.3 million worth of Palantir at prices around $21 and $23. And this is where people really started theorizing that potentially Alex thinks that the company is really not going anywhere anytime soon, or potentially going down, because now we're starting to get into much larger dollar values. But it's actually been noted by this article within Barron's that it was very likely to cover a tax liability. So Karp has 60.9 million shares worth of Palantir in stock options that were granted in 2009 at about 10.3-cent strike price, and then even more 8 million shares worth of options that were granted in 2011 with a strike price of 85 cents. All of these expire in December. So Alex Karp is going to need to continuously liquidate shares over the next couple of months because obviously Palantir is trading well above the 85 cent and 10 cent strike price. This is going to cost him about $12 million to exercise these options, but he'll have about $1.6 billion worth of stock that will be converted into cash before December 3rd, and he will likely need to liquidate a lot of that. Or I should rephrase that. He will have $1.6 billion worth of options that will be converted into stock that he will likely need to convert into cash to cover tax liabilities and have some liquidity available. So it's somewhat likely that the sale that was done on March 29th at the quarter end was a structured withdrawal for tax purposes, much like the quarter end sale or the quarter beginning sale on January 4th, which would follow up the last day of the previous year. Now, there was a sale back in the middle of February that really doesn't coincide with a quarter end, but again, it was a relatively small amount at $1.3 million. We can see here, though, that Karp is really going to need to do some liquidation of stocks and some planning because there's going to be a mega tax bill for this $1.6 billion. And so likely we're going to continue to see some of this selling. I don't think that it's that Karp doesn't believe in the company or that the executives don't believe in the company. Now, Alex has been one of the first ones to come out and say, along with Cathie Wood, that Palantir is a long-term play. And that's where I really want to talk about just how long he's been with the company and some of the things that he's mentioned about money in the past. Now, Alex doesn't have a family. In fact, he's mentioned to magazines and publications in the past that really having a family gives him hives. So he is not fond of having a family, and thus it's really just himself. And because of that, he's really taken the stance that he doesn't particularly care or need all that much money. So liquidating shares at compressed prices probably doesn't mean a lot to him. He's getting ready to take on about $1.6 billion worth of Palantir stock. And I don't think just because of Karp's personality and the way that he's presented himself in the past, along with just doing a lot of studying on his prior engagements prior to being the CEO of Palantir, he just seems like someone who could care less whether he has $1 billion or whether he has $3 billion by the time that he retires or calls it quits. And so I don't really see a problem with Alex selling shares at these compressed prices because he himself thinks that Palantir likely isn't going to be trading substantially higher in the coming years, and it's probably not worth it for him to hang on to all of these shares and just wait for them to appreciate when he doesn't even care about the money all that much in the first place. And another thing that comes to mind is Alex has really only been with Palantir. So prior to being with Palantir, he was really an academic, and so this is the big liquidity event. It makes sense to take the money out of the company that you've worked for 17 plus years in because anything can happen. Of course, there could be an accounting scandal that he has no idea of. There could be a lot of things that could bring Palantir down, and to just take some of that money out and have it somewhere safe because it is really his entire life's work. So to me, it makes sense to have some of the money outside of the company, and all of these sales are just really structured in a way to cover the taxes, to have some liquidity, and to really just take advantage of finally having some liquidity out of the company that he spent 17 years to build. So overall, I don't think that Palantir thinks that the company is going to go to zero. We can see that really the withdrawals have been at the end of the year, at the end of the quarter, and we know already that he's going to have $1.6 billion in current value of shares to liquidate over the coming months. So again, we just have to keep all of that in mind that yeah, the executive team is selling, but a lot of them have really had these options since 2009, since 2011, and they've waited 10 plus years to capitalize on them. You really can't blame the people for taking the funds. It's not like this company was just created yesterday. If that was the case, of course, there would be a little bit more cause for concern, but if we just take a look at how long the company's been around, how long some of these employees have been there, and the fact that Alex himself has never really been a big founder and never had a massive amount of money in the past, it makes sense that he wants to take some of the liquidity and protect what he does have. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think that Alex is selling and planning for the stock to go lower? Or is it likely just some structural withdrawals like it would appear to be from the filings? I'm always curious what you think. And again, if the video brought you value, don't forget to subscribe, share it with somebody that may enjoy it. Thanks for stopping by, and